you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Good to meet you too.
Yeah, very, very nice to have you here with us. And for those of you who don't know Alistair, he is a guru of the early years, basically. I think it would be fair to say. Everyone in the world has turned to him to learn about early years and development. You're an author, you're a blogger, you're a product designer, and a giant advocate of play. And really, the reason we connected is because of your new business partner, Jenny. And my first first 5 years venture that you guys have started. So maybe you could start off by just telling us a little bit about what you're up to these days.
I will. It's been a really exciting year. So Jenny and I got together literally about this time last year, and Jenny had this vision for setting up a company that was going to really champion parents in helping them to recognize the development of their children during those first 5 years. So basically take all the nuggets of information that we know as early years professionals, that we know about child development, that we use if you're an early years professional and working with children, and kind of give that to parents, that information in really accessible, bite-sized chunks, really to help parents to notice all of the little steps as well as the big milestone steps. And so we've worked on putting together an app, and that app actually launches onto the App Store by the end of this week. So it's a really exciting week for us.
So we're in the big last drum roll right now.
Literally, we are. So we have a
exciting.
website, and on the website, we've got myfirst5years.com. We have blogs and articles for parents to read. But also, if you would be interested in having a look at the app when it launches, if you go to My First 5 Years and fill in your details, we will send you a discount code as a thank you for turning up tonight. And
well plugged, nice and early in case we lose everyone.
I get big tips from Jenny for that. So basically, our vision is that we want to really inform parents and take away some of that anxiety-inducing parenting that's around, where people are saying things like, oh, they're 3 months, or they're not doing this yet, oh, they're 12 months, should they be doing this? So we don't work in ages and stages. We don't talk about 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. We talk about, if your child is here in this particular stream of learning or this stream of development, this is what's likely to come next. Here's some information about where your child is and why. Here's an activity or two to support you in that development. And here's a little bit of guidance through this journey of child development, which is fascinating and joyous, but also complex. And as a parent, you know, even as a parent who had a background in education, when you actually get your own child and you bring them home, it's just overwhelmingly mind-blowing. So we really want to be a credible source, a kind of one true place where parents know that when they come to My First 5 Years, they're getting expert created content, and everything we do and everything we say is backed by science and research. And so also and if people come and have a look, you'll see the work that we do, the blogs that we write, the articles, and also on the app itself, everything is referenced in research that parents can go away and do further reading if that's what they want to do.
That's great. So my first question is, as you know, parents are pretty short on time,
yes.
Particularly new parents. As I remember, I mainly walked around in my pants and t-shirt for about 3 months after I had my first one, just to get dressed. So when you say it's bite-sized advice, what are we talking about in terms, because articles, the moment I think about parenting and articles, my heart slightly goes, oh my God, who thinks I've got the time to read that or do that? So what are we talking about?
That's because, you haven't been to My First 5 Years and had a look. So, and always sick on your shoulder. It was always, for me, jogging pants, and there was always sick on my shoulder at some point, especially the first 3 months.
That little nice sour milk smell.
Which, you just get a whiff off every now and then. Nice. Yeah, so one of our main focuses was that we talked, obviously, Jenny and I have both had a long career in different aspects of childcare and child development. And we know that parents with young children want quality information, but they haven't got time to read a 3,000-word peer-reviewed article. So what we're basically doing is we're doing the hard work for you. So we're reading the peer-review articles, and then we are creating pieces of content of varying lengths, some from as little as kind of 150 words up to some that maybe about 1,000 words that would take you about 3 to 5 minutes to read. And we're decanting all that information into parent talk, accessible speak. And then at the bottom of those articles, there are those reference points. So if you're a parent and you read it and thought, that's really interesting, I'd like to know more, you can click on that reference and it will take you to the more in-depth stuff. But it is really about giving timely information. So when your child is at this stage of development, here's loads of bits of interesting stuff you need to know.
And does it have a sort of problem-solving element? So, like, I have a friend at the moment who has a little one who's a biter, and that's quite stressful, you know, if you have a little person who's just figuring life out, and then they suddenly start biting all their mates.
Yes.
Can it be used that way, or is it more just sort of developmental stuff? That sort of thing?
Absolutely can be used in that way. So we talk about on the website, there are blogs and articles, and the articles are a little more kind of science and theory based. The blogs are very kind of opinion based and information based. But for example, a bit like biting, we've been talking a lot with the content team this week about tantrums and why children tantrum. And the fact that when a child has a tantrum in Tesco's, it is actually a sign of their cognitive development. So scientifically, a child tantruming is a really positive thing because it shows that their reasoning is shifting. So almost though as a parent, you can't help the feeling that you feel when your child is crying near the bananas. But what we're trying to do is explain why that process is happening, how it's linked to development, and also a bit of advice about what to do when your embarrassment levels are rising. And sometimes your intuition is saying, pick them up, shove them in the buggy, strap them in, push them out.
I have done that.
Yeah, I have more than that, but actually the kind of the science around it would say that when a child's at that stage of having lost it, actually what they need is calm and still and quiet. So you've got to really take a deep breath as a parent and think, right, I will escalate this if I start saying, right, get up, get in your buggy, or whatever it may be. And the other thing that's bizarre is 80 to 90% of children will tantrum at some point during their development, usually around 2 years old. So 80 to 90% of parents who pass you in Tesco's while your child is tantruming have been through that experience. So actually the judgment we feel is probably misplaced judgment, because people aren't looking and saying, oh, what a terrible parent. They're probably looking and thinking, gosh, I remember it well, thank goodness.
So pleased that's not my problem today.
But we really want to try and get rid of that judgy thing that you feel as a parent, that, you know, everybody's doing it better than you. And then when you think about things like Instagram and you look at accounts about parenting, if you're not the perfect parent, who are you? If your children are not in tonally, you know, matching loungewear, you're sitting at a beautifully dressed table, who even are you? And actually, we all know nobody's life is like that. Even the people who post on Instagram. So it's that kind of real reflective parenting where we say we all aspire to be the best that we can be, but actually, realistically, nobody's the best every day. But here are some really useful tips, ideas, and advice that will support you on your parenting journey.
And I forgot what I was saying. First, I was going to say, by the way, anyone who's watching right now, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the feed, and don't ask me. I won't have a clue, but I'm sure Alistair will have a crack at answering them. And if you don't watch this live, but you watch a recording, then do pop any questions below, and we'll have a really good idea. Well, I'll again wing them Alistair's way for an answer. So do feel free to ask. One of the questions I wanted to ask though is about what do you think are in the resources and support you're providing? What do you think? I think the tantrum is a great example. It made me wonder, what else do you think is surprising advice that you're giving to parents, as it were, that they wouldn't necessarily just take as a given, if you know what I mean?
So we've got a lovely series that's about to come up called Becoming Series, and it's things like becoming a mathematician, becoming a writer, becoming a mover. And so what we're doing with that is we're tracing for parents how, when you've got a very young baby and they just begin to grasp and grab, and that time where grasping becomes a definite intentive movement. So I'm going to grasp that object and hold it, as opposed to I'm flapping around a bit and see what we can get. That initial grasp is a really significant milestone in your child's journey to becoming a tool user. So a painter, a writer, you know, somebody who is creative in that respect. And so in the Becoming series, what we will do is just take you through the steps of it. When you saw that, that actually links to a range of things, but one of those might be writing, which is very important for parents, that children can read and write. But actually, what will get your child to being a really successful writer is all of these elements of physical development, cognitive development, language development. It's not just about, can they hold a pencil and did we get the book from Marks and Spencer's or wherever where you trace over the letters. If you think about the concept of being a mathematician, the idea that mathematics is more than numbers, and actual things like number recognition comes way, way down the journey of being a mathematician. But if you can get your child to recognize like the threeness of three and what is more and what is less and what is big and what is small, and that you can do with your kitchen cupboard, what you've got in the back garden on a walk to the park. So another big ethos we've got in my first 5 years is that the resources that you need really for the majority of a child's development are likely to be in your kitchen cupboard, in your wardrobe, or outside your front door. There aren't a huge range of really expensive resources you need to buy. You don't need an iPad or a VTech. Other devices are available to enable your child to be a successful mathematician or successful. So all of those things. So we're trying to, again, make those links between very early development and some of the kind of end of journey as parents might see it. So being a writer, being a reader, being able to do maths, but how does it start? And what's a really effective child development play-based route to get there? Because as parents, you don't remember how you learned to read or learn to write. Maybe you learn to read, you do, but things like learn to write. So you tend to think about education as being the last thing I remember, which is often junior school level education. So when we're trying to educate our children, we often stop there with, oh, well, it's about paper and pens and lines and books. And actually, there's a whole plethora of really exciting, engaging stuff that you can do that comes way before any of that stuff.
Well, we have had a couple of questions, but both of them are saying, can you start this as a teenage app? Which I would, as a parent of teenagers, also like. I don't know if you're thinking about my first teen years as a next edition.
I am living my three boys are now 22, 20 and 17. But yes, when they were all in that mid to late teen phase, that's, you think when they're little, that's when the challenges are really going to come. But actually, yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah, I spoke to someone the other day who called it the volcano years. I was like,
right.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I can see that. But anyway, we are here to talk about the early years and young parenting. So I know that you're a huge advocate of play, and you might know that we're huge advocates of time spent outdoors. So I would love to quiz you a bit more really about those two kind of areas of development, which I think leads nicely on from what you were just saying about really these kind of later life skills not necessarily being super identifiable as, you know, the child who's reading a novel age 3 in the corner or whatever. So yeah, maybe could you talk a bit about the benefits of play and basically time outdoors and why we're right that that's all really important.
And yes, you're right, it's really important. And I mean, play is a massive passion of mine, as is outdoor learning, because the idea of educating children indoors has come quite late in terms of our education history, because pre the Industrial Revolution and pre the Victorians, we were outside, and as a race of hunter-gatherers, we learned about the world and our existence within it and our place within society and how to feed ourselves and clothe ourselves and solve problems in an outdoor space. So a lot of how humans develop is pre-programmed to be amplified or supported in learning outdoors. And also we moved through a phase, especially around babies, where the advice was to kind of keep them in, keep them swaddled, keep them warm, you know. And actually, we know that in terms of cognitive and physical development for even little babies, being outside can be really impactful around their sensory development. Just, as you know, feeling the weather, so the wind on your face, the rain in your hair, all of those things not only develop you in terms of the sensory sensation, but also your physical development, your language development. We hear things differently in the outdoors because the acoustics are different, the sounds are different. Also, when we think about the physical development of children, especially from birth to 5, their bodies are basically programmed to test the limits of what they can do. So when we think about children as being like firecrackers, and like we'll say all the time, ooh, they're on the ceiling, they're climbing the walls, that's because nature intended them to be so. So the more you can get out and test how big your body can be, or you can develop your sense of balance by hanging upside down or rolling down a hill, or you can develop your sense of proprioception, so that's your ability to control your body and their movements within the space that you've got by reaching and stretching and jumping across a path and balancing on a curb and jumping over a river. You can develop your fine motor skills by collecting and sorting, which links into your mathematics, that your language is going to be developed because your imagination will be better, because you're looking at the sunshine and, you know, autumn leaves. And it's just, the outdoors is literally a free resource that impacts on every single element of child development. Now, chucking a good adult alongside just what a child will experience just by being in a space, so an adult that can tease out some of the finer details, that's when you've got a really powerful model for learning. The idea of just, even on a frosty grass day, as I did with my nieces not so long since, saying, take off your wellies, take off your welly socks, it's freezing, but let's just make some footprints in the frost, maybe only 5 steps, and then we'll put them back on quickly. But just the sensation of putting your feet onto crunchy, frosty grass, the coldness that kind of shoots at the soles of your feet, the language that was involved, the kind of high engagement, the release of endorphins, it cost me nothing. Literally stepped outside my door. So the idea of the outdoors has been a place that's underused. And yes, your outdoors have got to be safe, and not everybody's got a huge park just around the corner, but it doesn't have to be a park. It can be your veranda, it can be the street outside. It's just about taking those opportunities.
We've done a lot of work with the Forestry Commission in the past, and one of the amazing facts I learned from them is every single person in the UK is within 10 miles of Forestry Commission forest. And they're all free. We can all go in them anytime. That really, really blew me away. But we do have a question, Alistair, which is Chloe's asking how she has a lot of parents who ask how to stop their children becoming too clingy. Do you have top tips on that?
Well, there is a huge amount of theory around attachment and how children and adults create attachment bonds. And it depends kind of what she means by clingy, if that's within a setting. And you've got children who are being dropped off, say, at nursery or preschool or school. A lot of that is about transitions. So there are different sorts of transitions that children will go through during a day. There are kind of horizontal transitions across your day and vertical transitions where you're moving into new spaces. And for a child who's 3, 4, 5 years old, being at home with one bonded adult and then being brought to your setting, even though you know that you've got friends in there and you know that the adults are lovely, that transition between being with my secure adult and taking a step into this even familiar space can be really challenging. And that's when children become clingy. And then sometimes adults can do that thing where they say, like, one more kiss, one more hug. Or I remember when I was a practitioner in a classroom, when I taught reception children or nursery children, you would say goodbye to the adults. It might be a slightly tearful goodbye from the child, not from me. But then the adult would go and peep in the window. So you would just get the child settled and you would see like this adult appear from above the windowsill and then go back down again. And of course, if the child gets a glimpse of where their adult is, then it all kind of starts again. So when you are, depends what the situation is, but it's having a strategy for how you can preempt the transition into the space with the child. So how the adult coaches the child through what's about to happen and listens to the response. And then the handover that becomes quite structured so the child knows what to expect. So it's when we get there, I do this and then I do this and then I go there and then I'm gone, as opposed to that kind of lingering, have I gone, have I not gone? But some of those things for some children can take quite a lot of time. It just depends on how emotionally secure that child is with that transition.
Sure. So some of it's just the patience of understanding it. It's hard.
Yeah.
Separating from your parents is a hard thing to learn, right?
It really is.
I'm just going to answer a couple of people asking, is this going to be watchable again or shareable? It is. It will be going on to Insta TV, and then we will be sharing it with the My First 5 Years team as well for them to post up. But just on Instagram and reshareable through Instagram. So I know a couple of you are wanting to share it with parents to persuade them that they should let children in a daycare setting have their wellies taken off and walk in the frost. So go for it. Direct them to Instagram and tell them that it'll all be good and get them to watch this.
And
So
this is going to sound like a gratuitous plug, but on my first 5 years blogs, we've got a series of blogs yeah, to do with outdoor play, but they are also written with parents in mind. So if you are looking for blogs to share with parents about the benefits of outdoor from babies right the way through, there are nice blogs on there that by all means, they're free to access, and we are happy for you to share them.
That sounds brilliant, and probably easier to share than an Instagram video as well. So good plan. And yeah, so Alison is asking, how much emphasis do you place on the physical environment to shape a child's learning?
Loads, tons, because if we go back to kind of Reggio Emilia, which is the kind of education approach that came from Italy, Loris Malaguzzi, and he talked about the fact that the environment is the third teacher, is this idea that parents are a child's first teacher because they're in contact with them all the time. Then professionals, so preschool adults, whether it be nursery adults, are the second, but the environment a child lives in can teach that child a huge amount of what they need to know. So the more diverse an environment we can introduce children to, the more curious they become. So curiosity is a fantastic skill, or a disposition really, for learning that we want to develop in our children, because curious children tend to be creative in their thinking, which means they're solvers, and we want really good problem solvers in our world in general. But also, if we bear in mind the jobs that the children at the moment who are kind of 3, 4, 5 are going to do, lots of them haven't even been invented yet, because technology will move at such a rate that the world, when they are getting to be employable, will be different. If we can have resilient, curious, engaged, creative thinkers, then, and the environment around them creates that, then they're going to be really well placed to be successful in that kind of society. So yes, and the environment we introduce our children to is crucial in terms of their development.
I was thinking when you were talking earlier about taking children outside, that actually also as a parent, some of my happiest moments when my children were really young were getting that feeling of awe again, because I got to see things through their eyes that I'd taken, you know, the idea of you're a baby that you get to look up and see clouds. It's just such a beautiful idea. And I never bothered to look at clouds as a grown-up. I just moan about clouds because it's cold and wet. So actually, I think all those things as well can really, you know, parenting can be a bit grueling sometimes. So I know we've got lots of early years practitioners here as well, but you are an app that's really to support parents, I know. So from that point of view, I think that is one of the good things about it. So it makes parenting a bit more fun, and we're all for that.
It is the joy of just reminding yourself as well that you can just go to wherever, lie on your back and stare at the clouds. And also as a parent, genuinely, if they're engaged for 5 minutes staring at clouds, you can just do a bit of deep breathing, a bit of meditation, maybe drink a cup of coffee. But
exactly.
The things you do forget to do, but actually having children or being with children gives you the excuse to revisit those things again.
So another question we have, which is, I'm going to slightly rephrase, which is that, do you have some good tips if you have staff who feel a little reluctant about getting outdoors, and, you know, particularly there was a lovely phrase in the feed, joining the weather warriors, out rain or shine or snow. Yeah, but you know, there are in a sort of earlier setting those who are more reluctant or less persuaded of its benefit. Do you have good tips for that?
Yeah, it's not just early years practitioners, it's parents as well can be reluctant to get outside because of their feeling of how they relate to being in an outdoor space. And also, really good outdoor spaces tend to get children dirty, because being dirty is a really good thing, and getting your hands in the mud is a really important thing. But again, increasingly, I've worked with parents who would be a little bit, ooh, don't touch that because you might get dirty, or you might get your coat dirty, or don't pick that up because, ooh, they might be dirty. So it's not just practitioners, it's a societal thing. What I know doesn't work is saying, right, you with a miserable face, get a bobble hat on, get yourself outside because you've been voted for outdoor play. Because what you want your practitioners and parents to understand is the why behind why it's important. So again, all of our parent literature starts with, here's an idea, this is why it's an important idea, this is how your child will benefit, here's some ideas about how you can do it. Not saying my first 5 years says you have to go outside full stop. So again, in settings that I've worked with practitioners, it's always been that piece around understanding why it's important. And different from a parent than a little bit from an early years setting. But if you've got practitioners who are really reluctant and you're basically saying to them, okay, the science tells us this, we know this is true, this is how children develop, outside is a crucial part of child development, you are a child development expert in your role, how can you say you're not going to do this? But that's also about understanding what outdoors can be, that it doesn't have to be standing in the rain with a rain hood on, with your arms folded, freezing cold, watching children over there. It's about creating that environment that allows you as an adult to really engage and think, oh, it's raining, get in. I have prayed for a rainy day because I've got all these things that I want to do. We're going to do some puddle painting. We're going to do some water collecting. We're going to do some wet chalking. All those things that we can do, we can only do when it rains. And if, again, you begin as a parent to have those activities in your toolbox, or as a practitioner up your sleeve, you're not thinking, oh, it's raining, we're going to be stuck in again, get the pens and paper out. You're going to be thinking, it's raining, I've got a lovely bank of rainy day activities. Let's get ourselves...
And some great waterproofs, Alistair. I mean, mutual plugging, obviously,
mutual
a
plugging.
really good all-in-one.
Your Instagram
Some
site,
wellies.
Well, there is that classic quote, isn't there, about there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. And that's the truth.
Absolutely.
And also, I tend to find children, most of the time, don't care. So they'll be out there and they're peeling layers off, or they've got wet feet and they love it. It's adults, again, that are a little bit, cautious. And rightly so. We don't need to put our children at risk. But
of course,
a good set of, ethical waterproofs ethically sourced, out in a space where they give the child freedom to move and be, but keep them warm and dry. What more could you want?
Yeah, problem solved. I totally agree. And that is all really fab, and I am really excited about the app, and I think it's going to be really amazing for parents because, as you say, these small bite-sized chunks, because what I found in my experience, and I don't know if you found it to be the same, is every time you think you've solved a problem with your child, i.e. your parenting, not your child's being a problem, you go, oh, they're being a bit of a fussy eater, for example. And so that's quite stressful because you're trying to get them to eat more foods, or they don't eat well. And then suddenly they start eating and you're like, oh, all's good. And then literally a moment later, somehow they're now wetting their pants when you thought they were potty trained. Or, they're suddenly tearing out going to nursery when it's always been fine. And so I think it's really marvellous to have a companion that can be in your pocket, in your phone, which when inevitably that next question comes along, you can turn to it and it can be a support for you.
And a lot of what we're saying is that's okay. So again, we've written a blog, gratuitous plug, around birthday parties and saying, like, lots of children love a birthday party, but lots of children really don't. That kind of noise, people, adults, expectation, games. So if your child loves it, great. But if your child doesn't, don't worry, don't force them. It's quite common. You might have a baby that loves tummy time. You might have a baby that hates tummy time. That's okay. So what we really want to celebrate is that uniqueness of every child, which is why we don't do ages and stages, we do unique journey. And it's about saying to parents, there are similarities with lots of children, but then there are real uniquenesses that will come from your individual child. And you're right. I mean, we had 3 children and we still said, yes, he's in a sleep routine now, which he was in for about 48 hours, and then he was in a different sort of sleep routine. And parenting is full of one development challenge after another. But again, if we can say to parents, right, this is quite normal. You might find this, but you might find that, or you might find this, and then this will go backwards a little bit because this is happening cognitively. And when this happens cognitively, physically, this goes backwards. As a parent, you might just think, oh, okay, that makes sense now. I can see that in my child, and that reduces my level of anxiety. Doesn't matter what Billy next door is doing or Chloe down the street. This is about my child. So in theory, for us, you could have twins on our app, and they could both be doing different things at different rates with different activities, because there would be uniqueness in their specific development, as opposed to saying, well, if you've got 2 children who are 6 months old, then they must all be doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just taking all the anxiety out of those.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the hope. And it's launching next week, Monday?
This week. By
this
the end
week.
of this
Sorry,
week, we will be on the App Store. Yeah. So website's up and running, obviously Instagram, Facebook, all up and running, so people can go over there and have a look at the information we've got on there now. But the app will be ready to download by the end of this week. But again, if you stick your details on the website, we will send you that discount code when it launches, just as a real...
Love a discount. So
Everybody
definitely
gets
do
a discount.
that. Awesome. Well, Alistair, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really, really appreciate it. And I know that we've had loads of people following who really appreciated it too. So we're going to probably leave it there for this evening, although I can still see more questions coming in. So we might have to answer those in the feed below at another time. But thank you so much for your
You are
time. I've
welcome.
really enjoyed it. Lovely to see you. All right.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.